my production team downloaded Henry Miller himself reading from his novel Black Spring. Play it.
It always seemed astounding to me how jolly they were in our family, despite the calamities that were always threatening. Jolly in spite of everything. There was cancer, dropsy, cirrhosis of the liver, insanity, thievery, mendacity, buggery, incest, paralysis, tapeworms, abortions, triplets, idiots, drunkards, ne'er-do-wells, fanatics, sailors, tailors, watchmakers, scarlet fever, whooping cough, meningitis, running ears, chorea, stutterers, jailbirds, dreamers, storytellers, bartenders, and finally there was Uncle George and Tante Amelia, the morgue and the insane asylum. No one knew that Tante Amelia was going completely off her nut, that when we reached the corner, she would leap forward like a reindeer and bite a piece out of the moon, and nobody could think quick enough to stop it. Just like that it happened, in the twinkle of a star. And now I'm going to tell you what those bastards said to me. They said, "Henry, you take her to the asylum tomorrow, and don't tell them that we can afford to pay for her." Fine. Always merry and bright. The next morning, we boarded the trolley together and we rode out into the country. If Mealy asked me where we were going, I was to say to visit Aunt Monica. But Mealy didn't ask any questions. She sat quietly beside me and pointed to the cows now and then. She saw blue cows and green ones. She knew their names. She asked what happened to the moon in the daytime. And did I have a piece of liverwurst by any chance? During the journey, I wept. I couldn't help it. When people are too good in this world, they have to be put under lock and key. There's something wrong with people who are too good. It's true Mealy was lazy. She was born lazy. It's true that she was a poor housekeeper. It's true she didn't know how to hold on to her husband when they had found her one. When Paul ran off with the woman from Hamburg, she just sat in a corner and wept. The others wanted her to do something, put a bullet into him, raise a rumpus, sue for alimony. But Mealy sat quiet. She wept. She hung her head. She was like a pair of torn socks that are kicked around here, there, everywhere, always turning up at the wrong moment. And now she's very tranquil, and she calls the cows by their first name. The moon fascinates her. She has no fear because I'm with her, and she always trusted me. I was her favorite. Even though she was a half-wit, she was good to me. The others were more intelligent, but their hearts were bad. Sometimes when she was fired from a job, they used to send me to fetch her. Mealy never knew her way home. And I remember how happy she was whenever she saw me coming. She would say innocently that she wanted to stay with us. Why couldn't she stay with us? I used to ask myself that over and over. Why couldn't they make a place for her by the fire? Let her sit there and dream, if that's what she wanted to do. Why must everybody work, even the saints and the angels? Why must half-wits set a good example? I'm thinking now that after all it may be good for Mealy where I'm taking her. No more work. Just the same, I'd rather they had made a corner for her somewhere. Walking down the gravel path toward the big gates...
let's pause right here. You're listening to the inimitable Henry Miller reading from his incredible novel, which I've been telling you about, Black Spring. Very few people that I've ever met know of it. They heard of Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, and they think they're books about sex. Little do they know who Henry Miller really is, and little do they know what Henry Miller is about, and little do they know he's one of the greatest writers of all time. Little do they know that Henry Miller was one of the great iconoclasts, and little do they know what the word iconoclast means. Little do they know that I drew great inspiration from this book in my Black Spring. Little do they know that Henry Miller was an iconoclast, and that the word iconoclast means he who knocks over icons. And little did they know that the word Mikhail, when translated from The Greek means he who knocks over icons. And little do they know much about anything, let alone about everything, let alone about this thing or that thing. And I shall return with Henry Miller on the Savage Nation.
Savage.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Today we're talking about books that changed your life and books that changed lives. And we started by talking about this and that, and we wound up with one of my favorites, Black Spring by Henry Miller, where I shared with you my Black Spring and how he helped me get through it. But the more important thing is for you to understand what changed your life, what was transformational in your life, whether it was a book or a movie. I don't think people read the way they did in my day. I don't think novels change anyone's life today because the age of the great novelist has long been over. The novel changed into something new. The novel changed into the diary. The novel changed into the autobiography. The novel changed into talk radio. And today, of course, talk radio artists like Michael Savage are the novelists of 50 years ago. I have known this for a very long time, and I've written about that in my own journals. You don't understand this yet because it hasn't been taught in the universities, but trust me when I tell you that while Henry Miller and people of his time actually changed the whole concept of what a novel was in his time, and he moved it from the old stagnant form into a unconstructive form, a sort of free associational form. Eventually, that free associational form of the novel gave rise to the journal, gave rise to the diary, as it were, itself, because we have all become, in essence, so self-possessed that only our own life is important to us. We really can't even empathize the way men could and women could in those days. And as a side note, if you look into this from the point of view of what a book was and what it did, you may not have heard of him. May think, oh, he just writes dirty stuff. That's so not true. I want you to read what George Orwell wrote in 1940 about him in his essay called Inside the Whale. He wrote, "Here, in my opinion, is the only imaginative prose writer of the slightest value who has appeared among the English-speaking races for some years past. Even if that is objected to as an overstatement, it will probably be admitted that Henry Miller is a writer out of the ordinary, with more than a single glance, and after all, he is a completely negative, unconstructive, amoral writer, a mere Jonah, a passive acceptor of evil, a sort of Whitman among the corpses." There's another aspect of Henry Miller that you should know. Although he started out as the radical socialist bohemian in the 1920s, he spent the last years of his life at a beautiful, expensive home at 444 Ocampo Drive on the cliffs of Pacific Palisades in Los Angeles, California. It's the way of the world. It's the way of the entire world that most people start out with these, I'm a left-winger, I'm a socialist, I'm an anarchist, bring it all down, man, and all they're looking for is a buck, and all they're looking for is a break, and all they're looking for is a publisher, and all they're looking for is a TV shot, or all they're looking for is a gallery, and all they're looking for is how to make a living in this crazy world. And once they do, at the end of the day, they all become the same. They want a new BMW or Mercedes, and they want to live in Pacific Palisades. It's interesting to me that it's Pacific Palisades because another writer, who I think was terrible, incidentally, both as a human being, not bad as a writer, he was a terrible drunk, whose name I've forgotten. He also wound up owning a BMW and living in Pacific Palisades, although he glorified the life of the drunken writer. In fact, the movie Barfly was about him with Mickey Rourke many years ago. Remember that movie, Barfly? Was about the writer Bukowski. Terrible human being, a total puke as a human being, but nobody could write about such minutiae in as great detail as the drunk Bukowski did. He could write page upon page about how it was to navigate a room while drunk across a living room floor. I mean, it was that good in that sense, but the topics he chose to write about were worthless. There was nothing elevating about Bukowski's work. In other words, if you wanted someone to write majestically about a fleck of vomit, you could go no further than finding it in Bukowski. But therefore, so what? Why would you want to read about a fleck of vomit? So therefore, he's worthless as a writer. On the other hand, Henry Miller could write about magnificent things in the most magnificent way and lift you out of yourself, as we heard when before the break I played him reading his own work about taking his aunt to an insane asylum. So let's listen to the rest. Fire away.
Walking down the gravel path toward the big gates, Mealy becomes uneasy. Even a puppy knows when it is being carried to a pond to be drowned. Mealy is trembling now. At the gate, they are waiting for us. The gate yawns. Mealy is on the inside. I am on the outside. They are trying to coax her along. They are gentle with her now. They speak to her so gently. But Mealy is terror-stricken. She turns round and runs toward the gate. I'm still standing there. She puts her arms through the bars and clutches my neck. I kiss her tenderly on the forehead. Gently, I unlock her arms. The others are going to take her again. I can't bear seeing that. I must go. I must run. For a full minute, however, I stand and look at her. Her eyes seem to have grown enormous. Two great round eyes, full and black as the night, staring at me uncomprehendingly. No maniac can look that way. No idiot can look that way. Only an angel or a saint. When I ran away from the gate, I stopped beside a high wall and burying my head in my arms against the wall, I sobbed as I had never sobbed since I was a child. Meanwhile, they were giving Mealy a bath and putting her into regulation dress. They parted her hair in the middle, brushed it down flat, and tied it into a knot at the nape of the neck. Thus, no one looks exceptional. All have the same crazy look, whether they are half crazy or three-quarters crazy or just slightly cracked. When you say, "May I have pen and ink to write a letter?" they say yes, and they hand you a broom to sweep the floor.
Pause right here because the clip is longer than the segment. I'm very moved by this because there was a scene like that in my life. Unfortunately, I wasn't there to take my brother to the home, but someone in my family was, and he broke down in the same exact way as Miller. Because in those days, they didn't take care of people who they couldn't take care of. They gave them to the state, who destroyed them. That's the way it was. We live in a much better world than it was then in many ways. I'll come back with Henry Miller and Black Spring in a minute.
Savage.
Earth angel, will you be mine, my darling dear, love you all the time.
All right, so we're going to go back. There's a minute and a half left of Henry Miller's reading from Black Spring. We can turn off the sound. They can't do both, guys. Where he commits his aunt. They give him as a child to take her to the insane asylum. And he brings her to the gates, and she starts to shake, and she's crying and scared. And, you know, this is the part of Henry Miller that I related to as much as the sexual craziness and the flights of fancy and the other stuff, because you saw a real, full, total man. Now, the idiot feminists who have never amounted to a hill of beans criticize them for being sexist and this. No one ever heard of them. No one will remember them. All they could do was attack and rip down the white male. But Henry Miller was a giant to these Lilliputians who tried to rip him apart many years ago during the nascence of the so-called feminist movement. He remains a giant amongst those who understand what literature is. Nobody writes like him anymore. Nobody can write like him. The only people around like Henry Miller are few and far between, and I'm one of them. And it's a form, you see, the art form of talk radio is misunderstood completely. And that is because it's not considered an art form. The people on the left assume that only people on the left understand art and understand form. What they don't understand is that you can love America and be an artist and know what form is. And so, although most of my show is politics, I have told you that as of last week, the show was going to change because everything is political. I can do anything and make it political. I can do a show on books as I've been doing today and make it political, and I can guarantee you, even if you've listened to this show before, you've listened longer today than you've listened in a long time, and I'll make another prediction. And I'll make another prediction right now. After the November election, there's going to be a drop off the cliff of listeners to talk radio. It's going to go up and up and up right through November. Right after the election, the American people are going to turn off right until maybe 2 years from now, coming up into the presidential cycle. And those in this medium who only talk about Obama or Republicans are going to be out of business within a year. They may still be on the air, you'll never know it, but their audience is going to shrivel to about 20% of what it is because there's only